Hello and welcome everybody to With Thunder's Applause, a podcast where two friends get together to discuss the events and ideas that will shape our uncertain future. I am your host, Steve, along with my co-host, Zach. What is
Hello.
up?
Nothing much. Like literally biggest thing. No, actually, I went to the D&D thing and they were doing children's hospital charity, and they raised like $2,704, I think. Pretty
Just
cool.
like doing one D&D one-shots?
Yeah, yeah. Just doing a bunch of
That's
one
epic,
shots,
dude.
and then they had like a list of all the things that you could like pay for to influence the game, and
Oh.
yeah, and so like a bunch of people just did a bunch of crazy shit.
Oh yeah, that's really cool. I
Yeah.
really like that. I've seen stuff like that before too, where you can people are and you're just like modifying the dice pool. So you're
Yeah.
and so it
Reroll, make
takes that
another
kind of
attack.
like cooperative storytelling element, right? And
Yeah.
expands it even further to where like the audience is also helping to tell the story.
Yes. And in many cases favoring the GM so that the players might be tempted to donate too. One guy was just like, 20, another 20. And I'm like, I don't got that kind of money.
Right, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us today. I think today we're going to talk about obviously Israel's slaughter of Palestinians in Gaza is still the front of everybody's minds because it's a really big deal. It's a really big deal in terms of history and geopolitics, and it's a massive stressor on a system that is already so fucking stressed by COVID. We really never recovered the supply chains. Like, this is what collapse looks like, and it's really a fantastic moment to be alive to witness. And
I
this
want to be
stuff going
alive
on
50 years ago.
in Palestine is part and parcel to that process. Where the geopolitical order begins to accelerate in its breakdown, because we could argue it's been breaking down for a while, right? Like, and this is really an acceleration. So maybe even just based on the geopolitical scene, like I kind of put us as like always at like kind of the cresting part of the hill in the limits to growth, like bell curve.
Mhm.
And I'm actually starting to think that we actually like tipped that. Like that was like the year after COVID, right?
Yeah.
Like
Well, and don't
last year,
forget,
basically, it was like nothing really happened, and like now we're really accelerating downhill.
yeah. Well, and a bell curve is always like, it's also just like a mathematical construct. There's bound to be little peaks and valleys on the way down, where maybe for a moment it looks like it's not so bad. It's like, oh
Yeah,
no.
actually, John Michael Greer refers to it not as a slide in like in that sense, but as a stair step. It's kind of like there's a series of crises, boom, boom, boom. We
Yeah.
lose certain aspects that we had grown accustomed to, like international travel, right? Like boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom. Like people don't travel abroad unless you're like really wealthy, which is the way it always was,
Hmm.
right? We didn't need airplanes and functional train networks or any of this to travel abroad.
Hmm.
We didn't.
No.
People were on boats, right? And they were in wagon trains.
Yeah. I was watching a show earlier, where I was like, up until less than like 200 years ago, we didn't have electricity and water, like in every house. And now it's like critical for the function of society that we have those two things.
Bro, I say this too. Like, and that's when we say that,
Hmm.
that is not like way back when,
Hmm.
we had to go to the out as of like the 1940s.
Yeah.
My children's maternal grandparents grew up when they were young in houses that had no indoor plumbing
Yeah.
in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's impoverished, but that was a lot
Yeah.
of the US. So at
Yeah.
that time, a lot of the US did not have internal plumbing, and also like, right, electrification was a
Definitely
big
not that.
part of like the public works projects during the Depression. Like right up to World War II, they really just started to like pump this stuff out just to keep people, just to put people to work, essentially. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. I was surprised. I was reading through some of the letters that my grandmother had written. And you know, you're a kid, you don't remember everything, but I was like, oh man, she was like saying how when she was a kid there was like 3 bedrooms for the kids, but there was like 9 kids or some shit like that. Or but then during the winter, one of them couldn't be used because it wasn't insulated well enough. So they had to condense down to 2. And of course they had an outhouse. And I'm just like, that's crazy.
Yeah, and we did an episode, I guess probably 9 months ago or something, on heating, right? And like concepts of comfort,
Hmm.
and the concept of making yourself more comfortable in a great in depending on the ambient temperature versus
Hmm.
like conditioning your space so it's
Right.
always the temperature you want it to be. A really interesting idea that I think is beneficial as we enter this era where we just can't have everything we thought we could have, right? Like we actually, like, if you want to be like you want to condition a space, you better be cutting and stacking wood a big fucking chunk of your life, right? Like,
Yeah.
and also passive solar, and we have material improvement in materials, and there has to be a lot of retrofitting, and a lot of that is the work that needs to get done, right?
Right.
um and we'll figure out ways to do that. But
Clearly, we need to make more stuff out of hempcrete. If
hempcrete,
you
yeah.
if you
And
remember that one.
oh no, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, we talked about housing and hempcrete before. But tonight, we're not talking about conditioning our homes. We're talking about
None of that.
Palestine.
Ah.
Specifically, we are talking about how Israel's push has an equal and opposite reaction, and or does it have an equal and opposite reaction? It has an opposite reaction, certainly. I think that was demonstrated this weekend, and I don't think I ever pulled a clip to include
Mm.
today of the massive protests. I saw estimates around 300,000.
Where was it?
Um, the protests in DC and elsewhere.
Okay, keep going.
So, yeah, so it's not necessarily an equal reaction, what we're witnessing against Israel, but it certainly is an opposite reaction. Uh, and so we're going to go through several things that have developed. I'm really fucking high, if that is not obvious. I'm usually a lot lighter on my tongue. I usually kind
I
of
cut
bounce
back.
around and I'm like able to speak fairly, you know, off the cuff and fairly coherently. And I feel like I'm just fucking stoned out of my mind right now.
You probably are. So I did pull a
We're going to
short
talk
one.
about
Are you able to hear that?
statesmen resigning.
Oh yeah.
We're going to talk about, so that's a backlash within the bureaucracy. Then we're going to talk, and we've talked about this a little bit already, but we have a nice clip for it.
Hmm.
We're going to talk about the political reality, which has been talked about a lot by now. And we had kind of previewed it earlier, like uh, backlash of voters against not, I mean, Muslim American voters, an entire voting bloc, but I think like is abundantly clear now. It extends far beyond Muslim Americans. Like, there's a lot of
Hmm.
fucking people who would like be like, "Oh yeah, Joe Biden's not bad. I'll vote for him," to being like, "Nope, I have no fucking clue. I'll probably stay home."
All right.
Right? I was like, I voted for him in 2020, but at this point, I don't see anybody better, and I cannot bring myself to vote for this motherfucker. Like,
Right.
this is a big deal because that
Mhm.
means Trump is the next president, and then the ruling class is going to try and stop him, and then Mike Johnson and all the other Christian fascists and militias, and there's going to be fucking conflict in the second Civil War and World War III at the same time. It's
Oh,
crazy.
and the coming of Christ. Don't forget the coming of Christ.
Oh yeah, the coming of Christ. But no, Christ he comes sometimes after the fascists fully take power. I think it's going to
That's
be
right.
pretty
Yes.
messy for the first couple decades.
Mm, mm.
And then we're going to talk about I guess there were some actions blockading boats
Yeah.
that intelligence said their intelligence, the activist intelligence said there were weapons being transferred to Israel after a stop to pick up more cargo in Washington, I think. And so they tried to prevent this boat from leaving port, which is awesome. And then I found out actually this is not the first time this has happened. Anti-war activists in the Oakland area have targeted boats before to try and prevent war material from departing for those distant ports. And mind you, we don't have anything on it here, but anybody listening to this would probably remember that like Italian port workers and other port workers in the Mediterranean have refused to send. I think early in the Ukraine war, they were refusing to send or to work to basically load the cargo, like load weapons destined for these conflicts. So there is a kind of what do you call it? There is a precedence for this being effective action of actually the longshoremen and the people that load cargo onto boats and the people involved in logistics simply refusing to comply. And that is an effective tactic. And maybe we could have a discussion a little bit later when we read the article about how can we support that work, or how can we expand that, and how can we put pressure on other logistics nodes besides shipping? Like where are those other vulnerabilities that we can apply pressure to? And I really think we've talked a lot about UPS and FedEx and gig work, right? Like the union, the push to get these young kids that can never get a spot with benefits and try and widen that out and start to pay them better. And they won that contract, remember? But wondering what kind of pressure points can be applied there. In the ground-based logistics network to maybe prevent us from at least you can say, hey man, like I didn't choose to be a citizen of this country. I don't condone my fucking my political leaders. I didn't vote for them. I don't think most people voted for them. They really just kind of win because they own the entire process. Like they control the process, so they just ensure that they win. And so here I'm doing what I can to advocate against this ethnic cleansing, this genocide.
Yeah. And you got to remember, it's like half a world away. So it's not going to be easy to help or easy to affect any change.
Yeah, man, 100%, dude. We got to change our intro to be like, we're just two friends who like get together, like while fucking on substances, and we talk about news.
Sometimes we switch up the substances.
Sometimes we change the substances. I don't know. Have yet to do one on acid or cocaine.
There you go. We've got possibilities for future combinations. Just reminds me of a channel I watch where a guy makes cocktails and drinks them as he makes them, and eventually at the end of the
there's a show. Sorry, I cut you off. Continue your thought.
That's pretty much it. And by the end of the show, he's just
wasting. Yeah,
half the time he's just like,
it's kind of like hot wings, but in like drunkenness, instead of being like, I'm gonna shit myself tomorrow. Like
I also know which show I'd rather be a guest on. Like, do I want to eat hot wings or get drunk? I'm gonna go get
probably
drunk.
Get drunk. Yeah, for real. So let's get into our first clip. This is a Democracy Now! Clip. I think this dropped yesterday or today. I don't recall.
3 days ago.
Oh, 3 days ago. My God. We're so behind.
It's also the weekend. We can't work on the weekend.
Oh, I work on the weekend, but you're right. I did not watch a lot of YouTube. Man, this shit is heavy. I have to give it a fucking break.
And yet, here we are. I think it's like the third show in a row we're talking about it.
I mean, I gave it a little break. I maybe spent a little time on Reddit. I'll talk to you offline about that. I fucking hate that shit. I fucking hate Reddit. I do not know how Reddit is your only place you go.
Oh, it's not.
Oh, okay.
It's gotten a lot worse. Now I mostly use it for answers and boobs, I guess. Yeah, boobs. There's a lot of boobs on there. A lot of boobs.
Are there boobs on Reddit?
Well, so many boobs.
How have I not found? I don't know. I'm in spaces. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about my experience on Reddit. It's not a very pleasant experience. It actually makes me sad. A lot of things we're talking about tonight make me hopeful that we understand what we need to do to change the system. And then I go to a place like Reddit, which has hundreds of thousands and millions more users than the people of us talking about what needs to be done. And they're just fucking vile and vicious and fucking incapable of being creative in the way they think about things, etc. So forth.
That's the thing. I mostly use it for like technical support, boobies, and no, that's mostly it. Like technical support
It-
and
yep, that
like
was it.
gaming communities. Like, oh yeah, I'm playing a new mobile
End it
game.
there. Technical stuff, boobies, and yeah, that's it. And that should have been the title of this episode. Let's
What
play this
kind of
Democracy Now!
response was there to your resignation?
To my resignation, I would say there has been an overwhelming.
This guy, Josh Paul, he resigned from the State Department. He sounds like he's British. I don't know who he is, but I trust Democracy Now! Anyway, he resigned for the State Department over State Department policy, which I think we read an article about a week ago.
Probably.
Right. About not him in particular, but just other State Department and other government officials resigning over
Oh, okay, yeah.
over this. So he's another guy resigning. So carry on. That's the context of the clip.
Gotcha.
Response that I've heard from folks, from colleagues inside not only the State Department, but across the US government, actually, on the Hill, in the Defense Department, in the uniformed military services, including in combatant commands around the world. People have reached out to me to say, we fully agree with you. Obviously everyone has their own personal circumstances. I think if we had universal healthcare, it would make it a bit easier for people to stand up on principle. I myself am, trying to figure out what I do next on healthcare. But the point is that so many people have reached out to say, we hear you, we agree with you. And I think, one of the things I found is that a lot of people can be in individual offices and say, I can't speak up because I will lose my job, I will put my career in jeopardy, and there's no one else here I can talk to. And yet I'm hearing from someone else just a few desks over who's saying the same thing. So I think there really is a communications crisis, a transparency crisis within the US government, and a policy crisis, because when you can't talk about foreign policy, when you can't debate, when you can't criticize, you don't end up with good policy.
So when you don't discuss policy,
right, and
it doesn't get better.
And I think that was the core of the last article we covered on the subject a couple weeks ago. Was centered around that, around the lack. People were sending letters and all this stuff, pleading them like, this is not how we make policy. Like, we have to be able to discuss this and determine together what's the best course of action. And this kind of authoritarianism, they don't use that term, but that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the Biden White House, the office, the executive office, in the inner core of staff, is like circumventing like norms and rules and not just traditions, but like processes in place to ensure US policy is coherent. And that institution that is in charge of that coherent policy is the fucking State Department. And the White House is like, we are not talking about it. Fuck off. And so this guy resigns, and he says people at the fucking Pentagon are against fucking Biden, right? Like, and other people at the State Department and other people in other executive branches.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm sure like the Commerce Department's like, this isn't good. Like, we're being put in a position like, I think I might have mentioned on Thursday, or maybe it's just kind of consumed my recent thinking about like, what is a good like revolution in terms of turning over in the comfort of the West. And that would be like BRICS being like, you are complicit in a genocide, we are sanctioning you. And all of a sudden, all the shit that comes from fucking China stopped sending boats. Like, that would fucking absolutely upend the American economy. Absolutely. Like, so many consumer goods, like, we wouldn't be able to get like razors,
shirts,
shit like that. Like, if
shirts,
BRICS,
shoes, like
right.
all clothing, basically, most electronics.
Yeah, and then what is the US gonna do? Because like Japan, when the US tried to stop Japan from getting oil and steel, Japan attacked the United States. Like, because remember, Pearl Harbor wasn't just like, oh, we had no idea it was coming. Like, no, we're like, we made a decision that, like, for Japan felt existential. which is you cut off their fucking oil, their petroleum and their steel, and their industrial economy and their industrial ruling class was like, that will end us. And then Japan said, okay, the Japanese state said, let's take action to address this.
Yeah.
And I think this situation is very similar. I think that if BRICS decided to fucking boycott the US, and it's not that organized, I don't think yet, but it is more of an economic union than a military union. And so if they're like, hey, we're going to stop sending shit to the US, you should make that choice. But you're now dealing at our diplomatic table. It probably, even if like we're not saying we're not going to force you to do it, but if you don't participate in these sanctions, it could hurt negotiating trade deals down the road. Right. And so there's this kind of like, there's a political element to it, right? Like a cost benefit analysis, a really kind of like a risk assessment. Like what is going to hurt us worse? Because of course, the one posing that question is the ruling class of that country. Ultimately, in all of these contexts, when we talk about international relations, we're talking about the very thing that we want to destroy, which is the fucking ruling class, right? Like, so it almost kind of we're almost kind of complicit in perpetuating the oppressive system as it exists, just by talking to it in its own language.
Yeah.
Oh man, fucking crazy. All right, so
within
anyway,
the system.
It's the violence inherent in the system. I'm being depressed. No,
I'm aware of it.
Okay.
Help, I'm being repressed.
Help. So people are resigning, and I think it's really important. I also liked the quip about healthcare.
Yeah.
Because I've had friends tell me I would not be doing this job. I would probably work for myself if I had healthcare. And how many of them are like, So he basically said there are many, many, many more people that agree with me who can't join me,
right?
Because they don't want to upset their economic situation. For a lot of those, it's like, I get paid 6 figures. I am not fucking throwing it away for this.
Yeah. You would be upending your life, for show.
And that means they're all fucking cowards. And then that means they're just good Germans, right? They're just going along to get along. All right, moving on. Now we are talking about this is actually about a week ago, right? This was before Biden
5 days.
What's that?
5 days.
Yeah, about the time Biden was going through Minneapolis. There's a bunch of stuff that happened. We could talk about Kamala Harris. Everybody else talks about this shit, but I feel it's important to have a narrative frame. So this is, I think, Muslim American Association, various local like civic groups that represent these people, coming for a conference, a press release conference, and discussing how Muslim Americans want nothing to do with Biden.
As American Muslims, we have suffered under many presidents through different types of policies. But this particular is a big red line. We believe by not electing Biden and him losing, it will reset the political discourse on the American Muslim vote. We believe that if Trump becomes a president, 4 years under him, how horrible it could be, is never equivalent to one night in Gaza.
Though President Biden was the focus of this group today, the leaders said that they will also organize opposition to any local elected leader who has not supported a ceasefire. But with many in both parties in favor of the current support for Israel right now, Jana, it's not known how that will translate in the year ahead.
Oh no, there's no Steve. Will he be gone forever? Who knows? Let's see. Where were we? Oh, yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not too surprised because, like, I kind of came of age in the 9/11 stuff, and it was definitely a whole lot of hate for just anyone from the Middle East, Muslim or not. Hell, not even people from the Middle East, people from other areas of the world, because most American, racism is not too specific.
No, I mean, even just think of as recently as like COVID, right? Like Asian people getting attacked.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
From fucking
recently
Japan,
now
bro.
where like fucking it's been twice now. I didn't get details on the second one, maybe you have it. But there was a old man that like stabbed a woman and her kid, killed the kid, stabbed a woman and her son, a young son, because they were Muslim or they were brown.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard a doctor, an actual like, professional, not that that really should fucking matter, but like it should shock that community a bit more that now their health fucking clinic is down a fucking important staff member because some racist dude decided that fucking Muslims hate Jews and therefore Muslims need to die.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's fucking crazy. Like, and I don't know. I don't want to apologize for it. Like there's, I mean, but at the same time, like none of us chose to be born into a culture created through violence, right? Like being conscious of the fact that like we have like certain aspects to who we are that are subconscious because we grew up in a culture predicated on fucking slavery and genocide. That's one thing. Like being aware of that, I think, is all we can do.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't choose to be born here. I didn't choose to be born an American. I didn't choose to be born an American at this moment in fucking history.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't choose to be born white. I didn't choose to be born male. I didn't choose to be born to, a legacy of people fleeing Eastern Europe who then you turned to alcohol and abandoned their children and abused each other. Like I didn't choose any of the, my fucking legacy. So I think that it's really important that like we just kind of stop being shitty to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And stop fucking killing 6-year-old kids because they're brown and like the media said something about what the ruling class wanted to do, and then you turn around and like exact that on people who probably weren't even aware of what was happening. I mean, maybe if they're Palestinian, they knew what was happening, but like what are they doing about it? Fucking going down to the town square and fucking waving signs and shit, right?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I'm saying that to like transition us to talking about people blockading boats.
What? Motherfucker.
What? I think that's the next thing, right?
It is. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, that was a flawless transition, and I didn't even really remember where I was.
Segue.
Yeah, so like it's one thing. So I do want to back up a bit. I had made that comment. Like Muslim Americans go out, wave signs. I'm not asking you to put in any effort. I want you here. In fact, like I really do like seeing diversity. And I've always kind of had a fascination, I think, with Islam. Like I've read books on like Sufism, and I obviously like, I've studied in school and everything. Like I am kind of fascinated by it, and I do appreciate it. Like I mentioned a few weeks ago, I went to Muslim service when I was in basic training.
Mm-hmm.
And like I do kind of feel it's kind of an interesting. I feel a kind of solidarity with them, and maybe that's because my political identity was forged through like in the second Intifada, as we've discussed before. But like, I don't know. I kind of have a fondness. I have a fondness for Black people too. Maybe I just have a fondness for oppressed peoples.
Maybe.
And that's really what it boils down to. Is that I've always just kind of felt like, you know what, you're fucking rad, and you have so much to give me that enriches me. Like, and maybe that's where it all stems. At any rate, like. So it's great to go downtown and wave signs. We had some things in Chico. You likely had some things in Fresno. So tell me in just a moment if you did. I opted not to go. There was a vigil Friday night, and then there was a rally at 2, I think, in the afternoon on Saturday. Pro-Palestinian. So one was a vigil, more somber, and one was more kind of like meant to be like a political rally and a little bit more spicy or colorful and loud, right? Music and stuff. I went to neither, and I was talking to a friend who also didn't go to the rally on Saturday, and he said, "Well, I heard, the Muslim community in Chico, which is quite small, was kind of disappointed with how few people turned out in support.
Mm.
And so I'm not saying protest is not something you shouldn't do, because even if it doesn't change anything, which is why I didn't go, now I'm having this perspective of, oh, it's not necessarily about changing something, right? It's not about the actual end of it's performative. I don't know. I'm torn on that. Tell me.
It's raising awareness sometimes. I mean, it's not hugely effective in a lot of instances, but I mean, I've definitely just been like driving along and been like, what the fuck's that about? And then go home and look it up.
Yeah.
I mean, signs on the street corner can work. I saw one saw one woman all alone on a corner with a sign. I was like, I feel like bring her some food or something.
Yeah, there's a little old lady, or there was, she's probably dead now, that lived in a tent across the street from the White House, who was holding like the longest continuous like anti-nuclear vigil in the world. And she'd literally been camping, and like the city of DC and everybody will clear everybody out. She was allowed to stay because it was like a kind of like, I don't know, they argued it was not disruptive. Like her as a single individual, she'd always get mad when people crowded in on her. Other protests. No, I'm holding this space.
Yeah,
as just like a little old lady. And so I think they tolerated it as kind of civil disobedience, direct action / like legitimate form of public protest, versus like, big rallies where they're like, well, when you put a lot of people together and you get them really upset, like they could destroy fucking property of capitalists. So
that's not good.
That's no good. So I do think protest is not effectual. I don't think it's what we need to do unless it's militant. But I'm kind of, now adding that into my way of thinking, is that some actions like Women's March, environmental shit, like, sure, I'm not going to go to those marches, but something like this, I might have to reconsider my thoughts on the ineffectiveness of protest, because like it's not always just about changing something about the system, but in this case about showing solidarity with other people that like you share values with.
And also just to let you know that there are people around that do share those values. It can often be hard to feel like there's anybody out there that shares your opinion, and a sign can be a great thing where you're like, oh, okay, cool, I'm not the only one thinking that. Maybe I'll be louder when people start spouting a whole bunch of pro-Israel stuff, and maybe I'll bring up some questions about them and become a little bit annoying to other people, so that they start to think about it as well. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, man. So at any rate, some pro-Palestinian protesters in Oakland blockaded a ship they believed was carrying weapons to Israel, and this is not necessarily the first time this has happened here. And as I said earlier, this isn't the first time it's happened abroad either.
Right.
With the support of unionized longshore workers, Bay Area activists prevented an Israeli-operated cargo ship from unloading. Would you like to read? Or?
Sure. Last Friday evening, a young Palestinian boy wearing a keffiyeh, a traditional Arab scarf, ran into the arms of Trent Willis, longshore worker and president of ILUW Local 10, and the two embraced on the road near an entrance to the port of Oakland. The boy was among a bunch of protesters who rallied up, picket signs, etc. They didn't want the Volans, which was a ship that's owned by Zim International Shipping Services Limited.
Zim. Invader Zim.
Yeah.
My daughter just started watching this.
They did like a I think they did a new movie, and maybe even like one more season after that, but definitely a movie.
Yeah, I remember you liked it. I haven't gotten into it quite yet, but we did watch Adventure Time too, and I did get into Adventure Time.
Adventure Time at least has a story. Invader Zim's pretty dumb.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Sorry to carry on,
it's
but
okay. I thought it too as soon as I read it the first time. I was just like, yeah.
We also cover podcasts, pop culture stuff on our podcast, right?
Yes, we do.
Like, we're literally named after Star Wars.
Yeah.
Fuck off. Carry on.
The ILWU Local 10 workers didn't unload the ship, and late Friday evening, the Volans sailed away from the port and out of San Francisco Bay. The Volans, I have to say, sounds like a species from like Star Trek, Star Wars, something like that. Doesn't sound like a ship. Sounds like a species. We told them damn Volans to go home.
They told them to go home so they don't take a gerb.
I can't read this whole thing because it's super long, but
Yeah, no worries.
no, I was just going to read this last paragraph. I think this is a good one. Last Friday's protest marked the 7th year in a row that the Israeli-owned ships haven't transferred cargo at the port of Oakland, according to protesters. The ship blockades have been part of the international boycott, divest, and sanctions movement waged by Palestinians and their supporters to pressure Israel to end its military occupation of Gaza and the West Bank and grant Palestinians equal rights, including the right to return to Palestine.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, of course we can.
Fascinating.
That's what we're here for. We're
All
here to
the
talk.
stuff I've heard of BDS, like I could be like, I understand the concept of BDS. Not once had I heard that. Had you?
Oh, heard it put
Did
that
you
way?
heard for 7 fucking years?
Oh,
they
yeah, no.
prevented Israeli flagged vessels from landing in Oakland?
No, because that's not information that other people in charge would want you to have. That
Right.
tells you that,
But it just tells me, because I'm like, BDS doesn't work. I'm like, fucking gun those motherfuckers down. And like, people are like, no, peaceful BDS and shit.
Yeah.
And I was a BDS is BS. No, I never said that. Like, I'm all for diversity of tactics, but I had no idea that like some of the BDS stuff was like actually militant like this. I always thought BDS was like, don't buy Goya canned chickpeas, you know, like.
And the soda stream also bad.
Oh yeah, and there's like some tools, right?
Yeah.
And be aware that like Israel is training your police department to also enact apartheid in your community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but here it's definitely more along the lines of like economic warfare, you know, where it's like, hey, we have the right to say fuck off, and so we're going to. So fuck off.
I love that, because like there clearly probably not a ton of vessels coming in from Israel, right?
Yeah.
Like and if you're like, nope, you can't land here, like, where do they put their cargo? They can't.
Yeah.
They'll go to another place, and then they have to work the if that place lets them in, then they can work the logistics out, and it costs like mountains more to move stuff, because it gets delivered somewhere farther away. Again, a lot of people are unaware of logistics and stuff, but that's a massive fucking cost in terms of energy in our economy, is moving shit around. And when fucking things really start to get tight, that's the first thing to go, is all that like, well, I just clicked some buttons on the internet and like 3 days later they send me a box. No, they couldn't send 2 boxes, you know, or they couldn't send everything in one box, so they'll send another 1 box tomorrow with like 1 thing in it, like Amazon or whatever, right? Like, it's fucking absurd.
I think we all know who you were talking about.
Oh, okay, great, fantastic. All right, scroll down a little bit. I'll read.
Sure.
The Arab Resource and Organizing Center organized the protests of members of at least 25 local organizations, including Critical Resistance, Queers Undermining Israeli Terror. This is a fucking really cool organization name.
Quit. Quit is there.
Quit. I love it. And Jewish Voice for Peace showed up in support. Truck drivers honked in approval, meaning, I mean, this, like, they might have heard somebody honk, and then for the person writing it down was like, truck drivers honked approval. I have no idea how widespread it was, but, you know, people delivering cargo to the port might have been like, yeah, that's fucking rad. Like, you know, and there are a lot of East Indian and a lot of like Pakistani and shit. The truck driving is one of the businesses they get into when they come to the U.S. Because they can hustle, and it's also like they build wealth. They know how to build wealth better than I think Native Americans. And by Native Americans, I don't mean like Native Indians,
First
Nations,
like
people.
First Nation.
Yeah, no, I mean like people born in the United States have zero entrepreneurial spirit. That's why they hate immigrants, because immigrants are like, I'll fucking hustle my ass off to get shit done. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Should I like fry an egg, or do you want to like Go
Go
get
to
an omelet.
McDonald's.
Yeah, they sure want to go fucking get an omelet.
They head out to go get an omelet, and in the background, you see the immigrant building a pergola for them, and you're like, ah, yes.
Exactly.
There you go.
This is quote. This is such a powerful showing of solidarity," said Mohammed Sheikh, an organizer with AROC on Friday morning. "It's really inspiring to see the commitment, support, and resistance of the Bay Area in support of the Palestinian people." I think that's
Yeah, that's
a
about
good
it,
place to end. Mostly because like it kind of like wraps it up, right? Like he's like this idea that I was having about like, maybe it's not just about like the objective, right? Like maybe there is some kind of stuff that's important to some people, and it's important to give those people that from time to time, and it's not too much to ask me to go downtown for an hour. But to be completely honest, like like I'm fucking terrified of where I live, dude. Like we live in deep in enemy territory. I'm like, who's watching us, calling us all like Hamas sympathizers? Because now they have a fucking, they're going to become a martyr. If they kill us and die in the process, they're going to be a martyr for their movement. We don't have a movement where people feel they need to martyr themselves. Like, can we build that? Please, on the left, can we have a movement where like we martyr ourselves? Like, so that we can be committed enough to something instead of just like fucking thinking about people's feelings and waving flags and shit.
So I think the
Sorry.
left's version would be strapping bombs to themselves and blowing up trucks that roll coal.
I don't know
And
if
then,
that's
like,
the proper
And
solution.
then, like, like leaving signs that say, like, buy a Prius or something like that.
You know what I thought about doing? And I'm going to say it
No.
right here. And if this gets admitted as evidence in court, I'll do my time. I promise. Because I probably will never do this because I'm lazy. And I have kids. Really. But I've thought about like all the fucking, because there's a bunch of like there are some pretty large exporters of food from Israel for like Mediterranean food, like olive oils. We have a lot of local olive oils here in California, so maybe less so here. They don't distribute them quite so much here. But like, yeah, I mentioned chickpeas. Like, there's all sorts of like manufactured stuff like falafel mixes and shit that all come out of Israel.
Hummus.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm like, what if we just like ran through fucking grocery stores and fucking squirted everything with red paint and then left? I was like, that sounds like fucking cool direct action.
They probably try to find you and put you in prison for a while.
Exactly. I mean, it would be vandalism. I think it'd be misdemeanor.
Yeah.
Maybe talk to an attorney before.
It depends on the value. You would want to make sure you stayed under, I think it's under $1,000, or else it's a felony. So, like, you definitely want to look at the price of what you're putting red paint on, figure out how many you're going to put it on, and then see how big of a splash you can make.
Yeah, you got to realize, like, okay, if your squirter thing fits up your sleeve, right, and you got a little pump here, it's a little pouch.
Yeah.
You're like, I can spray, probably penetrate maybe the first 2-3 rows.
And don't forget that they'll also like try to say that, all the cleanup costs are part of it as well. So you got to account that, into your, or under $1,000. I guess what I'm trying to say is it needs to be more than $1,000.
Well, if you factor cleanup costs in it, like anybody could be like, yeah, I'd charge you $1,000 to pull those cans off the shelf and like use some solvents and scrape and repaint. Because $1,000 is not that much. In fact, you can't even go to get a decent rifle scope for $1,000.
You can't even go to
no, you can get a lot of decent rifle scopes for less than $1,000, but $1,000 would be like below mid-range on the scope. So $1,000 ain't that much.
Yeah.
It's just glass and mirrors, bro.
It's not.
And aircraft grade aluminum. Like, what the fuck?
Wow, that's a mid-grade graphics card. And here you're like making optics and charging similar amounts. That's
the mid-grade graphics?
Crazy.
No, my graphics card wasn't that much.
No, things have changed, man. In the last few years, like getting into it.
It's like 2 years old, dude.
I know. It's gotten so much worse. Like mid-grade is now like $700.
Oh, just the cost of them.
Yeah, the cost. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant the technology's
No.
like rapidly improved, and I was like, I doubt it, bro. Like my shit's pretty new.
Yeah, no, yours is fine. Mine's fine. That's what I
But you
tell
just mean they
myself.
cost a lot more.
Yeah, yeah.
And imagine if fucking
Like the
China
top.
sanctions us, and then China's like, Taiwan, you are part of China. You will abide by the sanctions. Oh, and
Yeah.
that's how fucking China goes to Taiwan. Oh, it's World War III. It's already World War III. It's already good.
Woo!
Woo. All right, we're gonna end on something a little different. So we'll do a summary here in just a minute. But we talked about these are the various ways that we are pushing back against Israel. I don't believe it's equal. Like,
Yeah.
even if we like show solidarity with like the small Muslim community in our greater community, right? Like, I don't necessarily think that that's proportional to dropping 2,000-pound bombs on refugee camps and on ambulance convoys and all the other fucking I heard today, and maybe we'll find out more the next couple of days, they did another full fucking communications cut and
Oh, yeah.
executed another, and they had already done. I was watching some military maneuvers channels that I watch, and they did what was kind of believed that they were going to do, which is cut Gaza City off from the rest of the Gaza Strip by punching a line all the way to the ocean, and now they're just gonna fucking squeeze that until basically everybody dies because they're 100% surrounded by Israel. And Israel has zero interest as of right now in allowing humanitarian aid, in negotiating, in trying to rescue civilians. Israel is certainly not going to take refugees from Gaza City and transport them into Israel for settlement. So where do they go? Do they escort them across Israel's military line? No, it's an ethnic cleansing. All of those are trick questions. Their objective is to murder them by besieging them, getting the U.S. to cover for just enough days. It takes 3 fucking days without water to kill you.
Yeah.
They don't have to do that much. At this point, it's been 4 fucking weeks. They've been bombing the shit out of it, and nobody has done nothing. Now that Gaza City's encircled, they can fucking force them into dying of thirst. What do you call that? It's not starving.
Right.
Is it?
No.
What? It is, I guess, starving them of water. But like, starving, everybody thinks, oh, they're starving of food, right? Like, no, you're starving of water. It takes 3 fucking days and you're dead.
Terminal dehydration.
Terminal dehydration. Oh no, we're not ethnic cleansing. We're just on a program.
Terminal
dehydration.
Need to work for their PR company.
Maybe we should. Let's listen to someone who understands what the fuck is going on and wants to fucking rain fucking fire and brimstone on them motherfuckers. I'll be right back.
Israel bombed that hospital, and we all know it. And if you were somehow in doubt about it, well, they bombed another one last night, and they've done it before. This isn't something that's new. You've got American warships over there now, and you better be careful because they might just bomb one of your own ships just to blame it on Hamas. Because, yes, that's also something that they've done before. And if you don't know, look it up. The USS Liberty. Everyone in the world knows that the Israelis do not follow any rules of war. And we all know that the United States doesn't follow any rules of war either. Well, I don't think there's a torturer in the world who didn't learn it from you, who didn't learn it from the appropriately named School of the Americas. Look that up too if you don't know. America and its allies have a long and blood-soaked history. While the United States and Europe have been like ships sailing on a sea of blood, the blood of Africa, the blood of Latin America, the blood of the Middle East, and the blood of Asia. And you even had us in the bottom of that ship rowing like galley slaves. You're nothing but pirates. Like I've said, nothing makes that clearer today than your behavior towards Gaza, your stance on Palestine. Well, I don't think that there's been a genocide that you didn't support, from Congo to California, from the Philippines to Palestine. You didn't even fight the Nazis to stop the Holocaust. That was just your retroactive rationale. It wasn't the millions of Jews. It was 2,000 Marines at Pearl Harbor that got you into the war. at Pearl Harbor, a military base on yet another territory colonized by the United States. And in response to that, you carpet bombed civilians in Germany. You murdered 80,000 innocent people in an instant in Hiroshima, and another 40,000 at Nagasaki in an instant, all in so-called self-defense. Or you make up the rules as you go. You always have. And then even then, the rules that you make up on the fly, you still don't even follow those. That's because you are violent. You are violent and you believe in violence. What was that Netanyahu said? We're the people of the light, bombing women and babies, hospitals, churches, dropping white phosphorus on people to burn their skin off, blowing up entire city blocks of innocent civilians. That's the people of the light. You think that your violence is sacred. You think it's holy, sanctified atrocities. The more wanton, the more savage, the more beautiful and inspiring it is to you, because you think that the more violent you are and the more you're able to get away with that violence, the more it means that you're justified, the more it means that you are superior. And the superior always have the right to do whatever they want, don't they? No matter how sadistic it is, no matter how sadistic and how evil it is, if you can get away with it, if you can get away with being sadistic and evil, then you think it's proof of your superiority. And anyone who opposes you or expects you to follow any kind of rules is committing the ultimate crime of questioning your superiority. You're the people of the light, after all. And anyone who expects you to act like a normal, decent, law-abiding human being, they must be people of the darkness. And when you say Israel has the right to defend itself, what you're really saying is they have the right to defend their supremacy, and no one has the right to challenge it. That's what you're really saying.
God damn.
That's what you really mean. If you wonder why Hamas did what they did, why everything that happened since October 7th should tell you why. Because the Zionists, now I won't say the Jews, and I won't even say the Israelis, but the Zionists are fanatic, psychopathic, sadistic, racist, bloodthirsty, unholy monsters. And the Armageddon cult of the right-wing Christian Zionists are just the same. And it's a disgrace upon humanity for them to not be confronted and resisted.
Confront and resist.
Western supremacy, colonialist, imperialist supremacy that's being confronted. That's what's being confronted in Gaza. It's Western colonialist, imperialist supremacy that's committing genocide in Gaza right now. Everyone in the world is against you. Everyone in the global South. Gaza is a microcosm of centuries of anti-colonialist struggle. The entire global South, the BRICS nations, all called for a ceasefire. The whole global South is undertaking frantic diplomacy, trying to bring peace and an end to the carnage in Gaza. And who's against that? The West, as always. America tells everyone, don't escalate. Meanwhile, they're sending warships and they're sending special forces to Israel. They say, don't escalate, while they are escalating. I'm telling you, this is a showdown now. It's a showdown. Not between Hamas and the Israelis, not between Palestine and Israel, not between the Arabs and the Jews or the Muslims and the Jews. It's a showdown between savage Western supremacy and the civilized world, because you wanted to pivot to the global South. You wanted to transition the global economy, but you're sick. You're power mad. You can't stand for anyone to be genuinely free from your control.
Ooh,
Nobody's free unless we're all free.
that's true. You know what I call that?
What's that?
Mal, but it's not bad. Mutually assured liberation,
Yeah.
for sure.
I'll
I
take it.
actually used that fucking term in my master's thesis.
Ooh. How'd it go?
I mean, I fucking aced my degree. I got 1 B in that entire program.
Fuckers.
It was one motherfucker. My grandpa died, and I told him, I was like, I literally, like, I'm going to spend too much time traveling and doing this, and, like, it's not going to get done on time. Because, like, we were basically writing, like, 10-page essays every
Mhm.
week.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's no fucking way I can write 10 pages.
Yeah. You've described my nightmare. Please stop.
Please.
No,
Roll
no
the
more
music.
papers. I don't even like 4-page papers.
Roll the music just in case.
Ooh, chicka wow.
Ooh. Not too loud now. Yeah, man. And he gave me a B, and that sucked. That was bad.
Oh, well, I'm sure you
All
could have tried harder.
Yeah, I just went to my grandpa's funeral, man. Whatever.
I never went to any of those. Just passed me by. Oh, well.
Understood. Can you turn the music down maybe just a little bit?
I think so.
Even though we're only like 4 minutes till end. Oops.
There we go.
That's a little better. Cool. Well, we talked about it. Newton's third law. To every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I think there's an opposite reaction. Today, we discussed the opposite reactions, which is people resigning. Not quite yet the conditions for a mass defection from the imperial bureaucracy, but certainly people of conscience are starting to question whether they should abandon the state, which has huge implications beyond the scope of this conversation. We talked about protests, right? Mass protests. We talked about people going out and just saying their piece and letting their thoughts be known. I think me personally, I don't believe I finished this thought earlier, but I think that I'm not entirely sure that where I live, the anti-Semitic narrative around like any anti-Palestinian stuff would not stick. And I'm like, I don't want to get labeled an anti-Semite because anti-Semites should be in the closet. That was a good one. You even laughed.
Yeah.
At any rate, and then we talked about fucking direct action in this BDS ongoing 7-year protest preventing Israeli ships from docking at the port of Oakland, which just inspires me. And it's just like, I love living in Northern California, bro. Like, I wish that I didn't live on the fucking frontier, for lack of a better term. I wish I didn't live at the fringe of civilization and on alternatively the fringe of fucking fascist dystopia.
Yeah, you need to move more towards the coast and southern.
I know I should move, just more towards the coast, period.
Yeah.
I mean, the Redwood Coast has its fair share of fucking like crazy ass right wingers, but like there's just a lot of fucking poor tweakers and shit.
Yep.
Like there's a lot of not ideological people out there because it's just poor people doing what poor people have been doing forever, surviving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here in the valley, it's a lot more ideological. I think that has a lot to do with how much government and the state is necessary for the functioning of industrial agriculture in California.
Yeah.
I might have brought it up before, and I really should do the work of reading the book and reading everybody who criticizes the author. But there's like kind of a concept that's like one of the things that makes like modern states or complex bureaucracies, one of the things that presses peoples from like direct democratic or tribal kind of council-based systems of governance to like large complex bureaucracies is the control of water.
Right.
And so
definitely got that going on here.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So we got a mixed bag here. We got Christian fascists that want the state, and it's not like they, it's not like they want to destroy the state. No, they want to control the state because they need the state. Because if they don't have the state, then they don't get paid because the state controls the water. And none of them really want to have to like maintain their own army to fight all of us off as we like do guerrilla tactics to take back the water.
Yeah.
At any rate, this has been with Thunder's Applause, where we like to end with clips of people spitting fire about the fucking truth. About the Palestinian resistance as being a fucking proxy for the resistance of all oppressed peoples across the globe. And we also like to remind people that from the strictly Western perspective, that as these crises intensify, we will witness the end of empire. And when liberty dies, it dies.
With thunderous applause.
Not the smoothest transition, but I think it works.
We were.
Show me Grogu.
You can't handle the Grogu.
You can't.